So we are going to continue that look at confusing or challenging passages of the Bible. But before we get into something that might be a little confusing, I want to look at something that we do know for sure and we understand, and that is that God is love. God encourages us to love everyone. And just to give you just an overview, very, very quick overview from the Bible, there are verses that we read that say, for instance, but I say to you who hear, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. Jesus also said over in John 13, a new commandment I give you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another. By this all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. And then there's a lot more from the Gospels I could share, but one of the most popular verses or chapters of the Bible is 1 Corinthians 13. The Apostle Paul wrote that one. We have nicknamed it the love chapter, and I'm not going to read the entire chapter, but just a few scattered verses from it. Paul writes, love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. Love never fails. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Well, this morning we are going to look at Luke chapter 14. This is a situation where Jesus' popularity was growing, and there were a lot of people who were very interested. They were hearing stories about a great teacher, a miracle worker, all these kind of things. They didn't know what to make of it. And like anything new, people are just interested just to see what it is. It doesn't mean that they were, committed followers, just to say that they followed him around. I'm sure some of them thought of Jesus as some kind of a sideshow. Everybody's talking about it, so I got to see what the whole buzz is about. So as Jesus notices this happening, he then takes the opportunity to let these people know. He has a large enough group now. He said, you're following me now, but I want to tell you what it actually means to be a follower of mine. And so we are going to pick it up in Luke chapter 14, reading from verse 25 through 35, which is the end of that chapter. And so this is what the word of the Lord says. Most of it was the words of Jesus. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, he said, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, his wife and children, his brothers and sisters, yet even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. And anyone who does not carry his cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Will he not first sit down and estimate the cost to see if he has enough money to complete it? For if he lays the foundation and is not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule him, saying, this fellow began to build and was not able to finish. Or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Will he not first sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he is not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off, and will ask for terms of peace. In the same way, any of you who does not give up everything he has cannot be my disciple. Salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is fit neither for the soil nor for the manure pile. It is thrown out. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. May the Lord's blessing be added to the reading and hearing of God's holy and perfect word. So after that introduction, when I reminded you, that the Bible's all about love everybody, even love your enemies, we read Luke 14, in verse 26, and again, Jesus says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, his wife and children, his brothers and sisters, yet even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. What in the world is going on here, because it seems like Jesus is telling us we should be holding ill feelings towards those who are closest to us, towards our family. How come Jesus, several chapters earlier, says love your enemies and then says hate your family? What are we supposed to make of this? This is why I chose it as a confusing and challenging verse of the Bible, or part of the Bible. Well, and this is, like I said last week when we looked at the Hebrew midwives in Exodus 1, and they told this righteous lie, which really, it was untrue, but they did it for a godly reason. I said, we don't teach this to children over in Sunday school because they just aren't going to understand it and they don't have the maturity to embrace it. Similarly, we don't really pull out Luke 14 and teach little kids anymore that, Jesus says you should hate your parents. How would that go over if they go home and say, Mommy, Daddy, I hate you? Because Jesus said I'm supposed to, they just don't have that kind of maturity. And even for many adults, Luke 14, this is tough. This is a challenge. You got to do some digging to find out what's really going on here. And so I could easily tell you what it means, but I just want to take a minute or two to show you how anybody can come to the proper interpretation. You don't need any kind of degree from a Bible school or all that. You can do this with resources that are nowadays, thankfully, free online. Everybody's online nowadays, the internet and all that. So very quickly, it's easy. What you do is you can find in this case, since it's a New Testament, a Greek dictionary, and you look up, are there any other alternate definitions of the word hate? You can look that up and you can find that the Greek word here is meseo. Okay, that doesn't mean much to me, but when I look it up, it simply says that it means to hate, to pursue with hatred, or to detest. Well, I was sort of hoping for something that was drastically different, so that really doesn't, that's exactly what we think it means. So it doesn't help us out too much, but that's a starting point. The next thing I would do, and again, you can do this with, just going on the computer, and in a couple minutes you can find out how else in the Bible is that word used, where else is it used, and how is it translated? Well, again, the word hate, meseo, is used a lot in the New Testament, so I'm not going to read all of them to you, but I looked through them. We see things like Jesus says, you've heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Well, I think I understand what hate means there. And no one can serve two masters, for he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. Jesus also said, and you will be hated by all for my name's sake, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. And they go on and on with these other instances of hate. So far, hate means what we think it means, to hold ill feelings. So does that mean that Jesus is telling us to hold ill feelings towards our family? Well, we're not there yet. There's one more step. And this is the most important that a lot of people forget to do, is you have to give a little effort, you have to do a little digging, but it's not too hard to find out how did the original hearers of Jesus' words understand that word. Because even the way that we understand words changes through the years, or can change. And this is where we find what we call our smoking gun. This is the answer here. That back then, and even in our modern day, the words love and hate, we think of them typically as absolute words, where I love this, I know what that means. I hate this, I know what that means. However, they are also comparative words, because you don't love everything the same, do you? I love my wife, I love ice cream, and I love God. Not all to the same degree. I hate a lot of things too. I hate the high price of gas. I hate working late. All this kind of stuff. Hate rainy days when I can't go out and do things, but not all to the same degree. So there's a comparative nature to love and hate. That's what Jesus is talking about here. And so Think of it this way. This is the best way that I can explain this. Think of a horizontal line. Like back in school, I still remember when they were teaching us at real little to add and subtract, we had to always draw these number lines. And you have 1, 2, 3, up to maybe 10. And so if you want to add, take 3 plus 2, start at 3. Then if you're adding, you move to the right 2 and you get 5. Or if you subtract 2, you move to the left and you get 1. So think of it like that, where your left would be something that you hate the most, and it's over there. And whatever you love the most is over to the right. So you have a line. It's like a continuum. So think of where you would place different things in your life. Your mother, your father, your children, your job, your, foods, and all these kind of things. So to help try to explain a little better, I recently looked up what supposedly are the most hated foods among Americans. And I'll just share with you the top 5. We don't do a lot of congregational participation with this, but if you'll indulge me, I will tell you what 5, 4, 3, and 2 are, and then I'd like to see if anyone can guess what number 1 is. Just something fun to do. So anyway, 5 and 4 are tied for the same, and this is, you may love these things, but this is the most people say they hate these things. So 5 and 4 are tied together. They are tofu and squid. So on your line, just think to yourself, where would I plot tofu and squid? If I really hate them, they'd be down to the left. If they're sort of in the middle, take them or leave them, they go in the middle. And hey, I really like tofu, I like squids, they go on the other side. So just have an idea there. So 5 and 4 is tofu and squid. People hate more, number 3, sardines. And even more at number 2 comes on the list, anchovies. Okay. Now, I will tell you that the number 1 food is not a seafood. We had squid, anchovies, and sardines. But can anyone just shout out, take a guess? Not what you hate the most, but what you think most Americans agree that they hate as far as a food. Anyone have any ideas at all?
Sauerkraut.
Sauerkraut, that's okay. That's not it. Not it. Okay.
Liver.
What's that?
Liver.
Liver? Whoever said liver is right. Liver came in number 1. Yeah. Yeah. So then, on your line, if you love liver, I don't know why all these people hate liver, I'd put it over here. So that's what we're talking about. You don't hate everything to the same degree. You don't love everything to the same degree. But it is interesting to see what we're thinking people hate, sauerkraut and liver too, so that's interesting. But it's not just food, obviously. It's your family members, it's your co-workers, it's, anyone that you come across, and this changes, and it's for everybody. It can change minute by minute, So anyway, that's what Jesus is talking about, though, when he says, hate your father and mother. Let's say I hate liver, and let's say I love steak. So liver's down here. That means I hate liver more than steak, or I love steak more than liver. Jesus is saying you must hate your father or mother. He's saying you must love them less than something else. And in the next verse or so, he shows us and tells us what that is. It is our willingness to follow him. Basically, how much do you love God? He says loving God should be as far to the right on that line as you can imagine. It should be. Now, the other things are going to come on a line somewhere, but what's that gap between God and number 2? He says that gap should not be very, very small, because what's it going to take for number 2 to jump over to number 1? And now God is not the most important thing in your life anymore. That's what he's saying. That's what, it doesn't translate all the greatest for us, but if you know that love and hate are actually comparative words, that's what he's saying here. God must occupy place number 1 in your life. And he says this is so important that is a criteria to be a disciple. Well, what does disciple mean? It means being a Christian. It means being born again. This is a requirement. If you want to go to heaven to be with God one day, this has to happen. God has to be number one, and anything else, when you consider how much you love them in total, must be seen as hate when you compare to God. That's what Jesus is saying. That's why it's very challenging too. There's a lot of people in the world who they love their family so much that if their families say, I don't want you to be a Christian, if you become a Christian, you're not a part of this family, okay, I can't deal with that. So I'll just stay in the family, and I'm not going to follow God, and I'm not going to follow Jesus. For them, family's over there, and God's somewhere over here. Oftentimes we see it in Muslim families, Buddhist families. They're very family-centric, which is good, but whenever you compare it to God, you have to be willing to upset your family a little bit if it requires that. Here in the United States, we don't think of it as much of a big deal. I don't know what the number, it's a large percentage who say that they believe in God, they say that they're Christians. Now, whether they are or not, that's another issue. We don't really deal with that. And then Jesus goes and talks after this about counting the cost. That's his illustration for it. He talks about building a tower or being a king, leading men into war. Make sure you have enough people. Make sure you have the resource. Make sure you have the money. So I'm not going to get into looking at all those. It just illustrates what we've already talked about this morning. But I want to ask you this morning, first of all, do you love the people you're supposed to love in absolute terms? Hopefully that's yes. I love my mother. I love my sisters. I love my wife. I love my children. That's good. But how much do you love God in comparison? Do you hate your family enough to show that I love God so much more than anything else? And in church, we know what we should say. We know what the right answer is. But is that how it really is? And this gets at the core of being a Christian believer. And so this is going to be a little different message than normal. Like I said, I already got some congregational participation, which was nice. But what I want to do before I close, I want to give everyone here the opportunity where you're at to just have just some quiet time of prayer. I talked with George ahead of time. He knows what we're doing. I don't know if Buddy wants to play. That's good too. We'll have some just silent music, just a few minutes. Just where you're at, you can pray. If you want it, the altar's open too. If you want to come to the front, something's really on your heart, that's fine too. I'm willing to pray for you. You can throw your hand up. I can come to you, or you can just do it quiet. I know a lot of people don't like to, publicly, get up and don't know what other people are going to think and all that. However you're comfortable, but just a few minutes, And first of all, I'd like you to honestly ask yourself, do I love God so much more than anything else? Do I love him so much that this number 2 thing is to be hated? Because the enemy knows that the biggest challenge to the number 1 position doesn't come from the enemy. It comes from number 2. If that gap is short, there's a possibility that something could leapfrog. And if that is a struggle for you, take it to God. Ask the Holy Spirit to help you. And if you're okay with your relationship with God, yes, I absolutely love God more than anything. Great. I'm sure you have something else to pray about. Please pray for those who are struggling with this or something else going on in your life. Whatever it is, it's just a couple minutes here. It's up to you. As I said, you can stay where you're at. You're welcome to come up to the altar. In just a few minutes, I will then lead us in a closing prayer. We'll sing our closing song. So the next just couple minutes is your time, you and God, to use as you'd like. Jesus,